How's it going, everybody? My name is Alex from the MTG Homebrew Network podcast, and today I'm coming out with you with another Tiny Leaders deck tech. This time we are taking a look at Isshin, Two Heavens as One. This deck is a ton of fun. It's a 3-color deck, and it's pretty bonkers. So Isshin is a 3/4 human samurai. He's legendary. He is a red, a white, and a black to cast. And he says, if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. I had so much trouble with that. It's literally right in front of me. So as a lot of players know, in basically any format, Commander, Tiny Leaders, Pioneer, anything, if a Magic card has the word additional in its text box, it is just begging to be broken. Literally any example that you can bring up, they're incredibly powerful cards. Additional is a very powerful word to attach to any ability, and that's why you don't see it too often. So Ishin, basically if you attack and something triggers because of you attacking, that trigger is doubled, and that is really powerful. That is all we want to do. All this deck wants to do is get pretty good value triggers off of attacking, and then getting bonuses off of doubling that trigger. The primary way we do that is a little keyword called Exalted. We'll take a look at Across and Squire. We'll get right into the creatures here. So Exalted says whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it doesn't have to be the creature with Exalted, as long as you have something with Exalted on the field and you are swinging with one and exactly one creature, that ability will trigger. All of the Exalted abilities on your field will trigger. And with Ishin, that means for every instance of Exalted you have on your battlefield, you are going to get +2/+2 to whatever you're attacking alone with. The vast majority of the time, it is going to be Ishin because he is a 3/4 for 3, which is nuts. He's got a huge body already, and it's just going to get bigger, and it's going to get bigger very fast. If you remember my Jasmine Boreal deck tech video, that deck swung very wide. It wanted to get as many creatures on the board as possible and swing with all of them. This deck also wants to get creatures on the battlefield because that's where a lot of our Exalted triggers lie, but we only ever want to swing with one creature at a time. And like I said, the vast majority of the time that is going to be Ishin, unless we're in a corner and we just need to swing with something to get damage in. So we'll get right into the creatures. We'll start with our Exalted triggers. So we have, like I said, Across and Squire, Avon Squire. We'll just go down the list. Basically, we play every creature that has Exalted printed on it in our colors. There aren't any more of them. There's not really any room to pick and choose, but they're all fine. We don't care about their stats or really any other abilities they have. We just want them to have Exalted, and we want them on the field at all times. That being said, we also play 2 creatures that are kind of like support creatures that don't have Exalted but are still really good. So first we have Akiri, Fearless Voyager. She says she's a 3/3 for 3, which is again like a good rate, but the biggest part that we are looking for with her kit is that first line. Whenever you attack a player with one or more equipped creatures, draw a card. We have a bunch of equipment in our deck that we'll get to in a bit, but as long as Ishin has an equipment on it or some other creature has an equipment on it and we're swinging, Ishin will double that trigger, and we're drawing 2 cards essentially for free, which is crazy in any game, in any format you want to name. It's awesome. Plus, she has that little other thing that you may unattach an equipment from a creature you control for a white. If you do, tap that creature and it gains indestructible until the end of the turn. Just super useful to protect Ishin or really any other creature that we happen to have equipped at the time. And then we have Atraxa's Skitterfang. This is a new creature from Phyrexia All Will Be One. I thought it's a really spicy pick to put in here. It is a 2/2 for 3. It is a Phyrexian insect, and it enters the battlefield with 3 oil counters on it. At the beginning of combat on your turn, which is not based on a creature attacking, so we don't double this trigger with Isshin, but that's okay, we don't really need to. You may remove an oil counter from Atraxa's Skitterfang. When you do, target creature you control gains your choice of flying, vigilance, death touch, or lifelink until end of turn. So normally you'd want to put more counters on this or abuse it somehow that way, or play it with oil counter synergies specifically. But this is in the deck just as a little extra padding. So if someone has a lot of bodies on the ground that they don't care about, like if this deck is playing against Jasmine and you can just have expendable creatures block, then you can give it flying or vigilance or death touch or whatever it needs at the time, because you get to choose from any one of them each time. It's not an ability that says like you have to pick one that hasn't been chosen so far, which is nice. But yeah, super useful. Basically, it's there for when you need it. It has a good array of options for what you need at the time. Super helpful. So creatures, again, bread and butter, but this deck also has a lot of other tricks up its sleeve. Like I said earlier, it is red, white, black. And that means, as we've talked about before, Tiny Leaders is the format of removal. It's got the most efficient and the most devastating single target removal that you can ask for, because it's everything under 3 mana. And we can get right into a lot of our really good removal down in our instance. So we have a Braid. Great card, would put this in any red deck ever in Tiny Leaders. Boros Charm is another really good one. This is a modal spell, so it's like Atraxa's Skitterfang. It's whatever we need at the time. If we need to squeeze through 4 extra damage just to close out the win, or if we need to protect Ishin, it gets a permanent indestructible. Or if we're swinging it for game and we're really afraid of the crackback on the next turn, we can give Ishin double strike and we can double his damage output that turn. Super duper useful. Eliminate. Eliminate goes in every black deck in the format. Honestly, I would play this in most black decks, period, because I think this card is crazy. It is an instant for 1 and a black. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, again, crazy, with converted mana cost 3 or less. So a lot of times this is not going to hit your crazy big targets in Commander, but it hits everything in this format. Period. No messing around. Every single creature or planeswalker you can come across in this format, it is just a 2 mana, get it out of here with no drawbacks. It's incredible. It's so, so good. Fateful Absence. I have a really funny story about this. This was played against me in a game where I was playing against Kyle, and he destroyed my commander, or my Tiny Leader, and I investigate, so I make a little clue token with pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card, which, not bad. It's a little bit of drawback for him. It's some draw power for me. It's a little for your troubles. Here's a little card draw for you. But I only had 4 mana that game. I had 4 mana the whole game. I did not draw lands. I did not draw a ramp. And it was rough. I had to sit there and consider using half the mana on my turn to draw a card that might not have even helped me. I was in a pretty dire situation and I had to make very hard decisions, and spending half my turn to potentially just draw a land. And yeah, that's cool, but I need help now. I need kill spells. I need things to get me out of this situation now. And I couldn't do it. I could not commit the resources to sacrificing the clue. And so if you're playing this against your opponent, sometimes if they're backed into the corner and they only have so many options, the clue will just stick around and they will not put their resources into sacrificing and drawing a card. And so it's really, really effective a lot of the time. Smother, a lot like Eliminate. It's very, very similar. It's destroy target creature, so it doesn't hit planeswalkers, but they can't be regenerated. So it gets around that little hook sometimes that people will play like a Dawn Charm or something else to regenerate a creature that can kind of ruin your whole turn or your day, and Smother gets around that. Swords to Plowshares, one of the most commonly played, one of the best removal spells, period, especially in white. It's a single mana and it exiles a creature, so it's definitely not coming back. And its controller gains life equal to its power. Small price to pay for getting rid of something that is stopping your game plan, as it were. And then we have a couple sorceries that are also removal that I'll throw in that are really, really good. Vindicate, destroy target permanent. Really nice to have if someone has like an equipment that is making their deck turn on, or like an enchantment that is locking you down. This can absolutely save the day. It's 3 mana, so it's the top of the curve, and it's sorcery speed, so it's on our turn. We can't play it in response to stuff, but still it can turn the tide of the game because it specifies permanent and it's not just a creature removal. And then we can go to our artifacts. This is, again, where we're going to get a lot of our trigger doubles from Isshin to make all of these equipment that are already really, really good, and we'll turn them into like crazy, crazy effective cards. So we have Great Sword of Tyr. Whenever equipped creature attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it and tap up to 1 target creature defending player controls. So quick maths with Ishin, that is 2 1/1 counters, so they don't go away at the end of the turn. 2 1/1 counters, and you tap 2 creatures the defending player controls. And not a lot of these decks put a lot of bodies on the ground, so that can easily just open the path up right to your opponent to get right in for just some damage. Really, really powerful. Sword of the Animist. A lot of Commander players and other players know this card. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever a creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, shuffle your library. I cannot tell you how fun it is to, if your opponent is just putting bodies in front of Ishin, and you can't get in for any significant damage because you don't have trample. Sword of the Animist, you're dumping 2 basics out of your land every turn, and you just amass enough mana to like never care about anything ever. You can just dump your whole hand. You have enough resources for you and your opponent, but it's just yours, and you get to do it every single turn, and it's on combat, so it's before damage is dealt, before they have a chance to declare blockers and do anything. Really, really awesome. It's hysterical to play a Tiny Leaders deck and just have like 10 lands on the battlefield, because you just don't see that very often. Ton of fun. Trepanation Blade, really, really powerful card. When a equipped creature attacks, defending player reveals cards from the top of their library until he or she or they reveal a land card. That creature gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn for each card revealed this way. That player puts the revealed cards into his or her graveyard. So when you're talking about a Tiny Leaders deck only running 17 to 19 lands, and realistically, by the time you have enough mana to play this, equip it, attack, realistically 3 or 4 of those lands are out, so you're looking at like 12 to 15 lands. You're milling them for 2 of those every turn. And it's not like they go to the bottom of the library, they go to the graveyard. So you're milling a ton of cards just on your attack triggers. And you get +1/+0 for each card revealed this way. So Ishin can get absolutely massive when you attack with this, because you're doing it twice. I've only ever really gotten to connect with this card a couple of times, but it is devastating every single time I do it. It is unreal. And now I've got one more artifact. I kind of sweeped over it real quick because this is an absolute sleeper of the deck. Not a lot of people know about the Greatsword, but everybody knows about Trepanation and Sword of the Animist. But this card is an absolute sleeper. I've never seen it played anywhere but in this deck. It is called Reaper's Talisman. It is out of one of the Commander Legends sets. It says when a equipped creature attacks, it gains Death Touch until the end of the turn. We can't do a lot with 2 Death Touch triggers for Ishin, but the second part is where the effectiveness lies. Whenever a equipped creature attacks alone, which we are doing always, no exceptions, defending player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Now, again, we're doubling this, so just on attacks, we are gaining 4 life and our opponent is losing 4 life. That is an 8-point life swing before blockers are declared, and that is insane. And it's not damage, it's not something you can prevent, you're just losing life. And you're just gaining life as a bonus. You're getting farther and farther ahead of your opponent just for free. And like Great Sword of Tyr, I didn't mention this earlier, but Great Sword of Tyr costs 2 and is equipped for 1, which is nothing. That is so cheap. Reaper's Talisman is switched around. It's played for 1 and equipped for 2. Again, nothing. Pennies to equip this to your creature. It is I think this is a very powerful card just in general for how low costed it is. But in Isshin, it is absolutely devastating. I mean, that's like 4 or 5 swings and they're dead. That's it. Even like before damage, it's just from this loss of life trigger. It is crazy. So I'll go around to our last artifact. It is Expedition Map. Expedition Map is really important in this deck because it searches for 1 land in particular. It is our last exalted source, and it is called Cathedral of War. It enters tapped, which is a bummer, and it taps for a colorless, which is another bummer. But a super duper not bummer is the fact that it has exalted and it's on a land. Not a lot of ways to interact with lands in Tiny Leaders. Obviously, Strip Mine is banned. You can play the other ones. I can't think of the names right now. There's a couple other lands that you can sacrifice to destroy land. There's a couple other ways to destroy lands, but not a whole lot played in Tiny Leaders. So it is fairly safe on the board compared to your creatures. And it's a really easy way to just get another exalted trigger on the battlefield, buff Isshin some more, and just keep swinging in for more and more damage. Finally, I'm going to talk about some of the more support instants and sorceries. So we have ways to get back our creatures if they die, because it's really important that they stay on the battlefield. We can't be swinging in with just a 3/4. It's not going to last very long. So we have a couple of ways to get our stuff back. One is Reanimate. Return a creature card from graveyard to the battlefield. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Everything's 3 or less, so that last line is never a huge problem. It's just 1 mana, couple life, and you get your really important creatures back. Absolute must in, I'd say, any deck that has black and is running any important creatures whatsoever. We have Unearth, which is very similar. Return target creature card with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, all of these cards that list CMC 3 or less as a drawback are just, they're perfect in Tiny Leaders. They're not a drawback at all. It just hits every single thing ever. Plus it has cycling, just in case you're doing fine and you just want cards. It's really nice to have that there. And then we have Sign in Blood. This is just a really fun card, really good card draw outlet. If you really are desperate for it, draw 2 cards, lose 2 life for 2 black mana. Really good rate. 2 life is hardly a cost to pay for such powerful card advantage. We're not really worried about it. And then we have Steel Shearer's Gift to search for any one of our equipment. They really help turn the deck on, and they really give us more advantage bonuses rather than just damage on Ishin or whatever creature we happen to be swinging with, especially for 1 mana to put it right in your hand. Unbeatable. It's incredibly powerful. And now lastly, this is kind of like the cherry on top of the deck. This is where the deck gets really nice and spicy. So you've probably noticed in this whole deck tech that there is a very distinct lack of trample in this deck. Not a lot we can do about that. We're not playing green. We could play some equipment with trample, but then we lose out on our good effects. And when you're only running 50 cards in Tiny Leaders, you have to be focused. You can't go off on these divisions and these excursions of like playing okay cards that don't necessarily do what the deck wants to do, but are helpful and good, but you want to be doing the thing the deck wants to do all the time. If you start deviating, you're going to dirtle, you're going to waste your time, and you're going to be all over the place, and your opponent is just going to stop you. So we want to take advantage of Isshin getting really, really big as much as possible. So we play a couple of spells that directly take advantage of that in the form of Fling effects. These are easily the best and funniest ways to close out a game. In lieu of trample damage, if we get one hit in with like 3 or 4 exalted triggers on the battlefield and Ishin, that's already 10 damage, 9 damage. And if we hit in for that 9 or 10 damage, and then we fling Ishin again, because Ishin's going back to the command zone, we can just replay him. We essentially double our damage for the turn, which is insane. Incredibly good rate. So Fling says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Ishin, because he's the one getting buffed. Fling deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. So maybe there's a big creature on the other side of the battlefield we're really worried about. Maybe it's preventing us from winning and we have to get rid of it, or it's going to kill us and we have to get rid of it. Not super likely. Most of the time, it's just right at our opponent's face. It is just trying to close out the game and trying to just hurl this massive, massive samurai right at our opponent's face. And the best part about Fling effects is we play 3 of them. So the classic, the sort of nickname for this type of damage dealing Fling, we have Thud, which is also a really goofy version. So Thud is 1 red, a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you sacrifice a creature. Thud deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. Again, just about always, it's going to be our opponent's face. And then our last one is Rite of Consumption. It's essentially the same thing, but 1 in a black. Sacrifice a creature, deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target player. And if that wasn't enough, Rite of Consumption also gains you life equal to the damage dealt this way. So you swing in with, say, a 13-14 Ishin, and it doesn't connect. Oh well. But you think, I need to deal damage this turn, no matter what. It's super important. I'm going to Rite of Consumption, because our Exalted triggers last until the end of the turn. So even though this and Thud are sorceries, Ishin swings, becomes a 13-14, and he stays a 13-14 even after combat until our turn is over. So we Rite of Consumption during a post-combat main phase, and we still get all the benefits, and we gain 13 life. That is a 13 life swing for 2 mana. It literally just doesn't get better than that. And then we're playing Tiny Leaders, so mana's low, so we can probably cast Ishin next turn, get him buffed again, get him swinging again, and who knows, play Thud or Fling the next turn. That is an absolutely hysterical way to win, and it is just my favorite thing. It's a way to deal like 30 damage to a player in 1 turn, and it makes you truly not miss trample in this deck. You can just keep throwing Ishin at the other player turn after turn after turn and get rid of their little dudes and just launch one of these spells at them, and you're not even mad. You're like, whatever, that's great. I don't even care that I swung for 3 turns and didn't do anything because I just dealt 15 plus damage in 1 turn with this little dinky little spell. Last part that I'm going to go over is our lands. A lot like Jasmine, I don't really go into the mana base. It's kind of whatever you want, depending on how you play. You can play any kind of lands that you want, based on the color breakdown, based on how fast you want to be, that kind of thing. But I talked about how we're in Mardu. We're in white, black, red, and we're playing a lot of really good removal. Because again, this deck doesn't have trample, and so if there's a really pesky blocker that's sticking around, something with indestructible, something that doesn't take combat damage but can be destroyed or take other forms of damage, or has hexproof possibly. Basically evasion stuff and, you know, things that prevent us from killing creatures we really need to kill. We play Arcane Lighthouse, which is a very underplayed land. Would highly recommend putting this into a deck where you are trying to get combat damage through or whatever, and sometimes you just need a creature to die. You need your spells to connect, and Arcane Lighthouse is a really great way to do that, especially because a lot of other cards might sacrifice themselves to fulfill this effect, which is you pay 1, you tap it. Until the end of the turn, creatures your opponents control lose hexproof and shroud and can't have hexproof or shroud. Really great workaround for protection for your opponent's tiny leaders, to get them out of there. Really, really effective. I'd play this in a lot of decks that had really powerful removal. Super, super effective. And just not something I see played a lot, honestly. Besides that, I play some of my favorites. The cycling lands, the filter lands, stuff like that. I love those. They're great in every deck. They feel really good. Get your fixing very, very well because we're in 3 colors. We really need our fixing because we want to drop Isshin on turn 3. We can't really get him out sooner than that, but turn 3 for sure, we want him on the battlefield and we want him to set up to start swinging. And of course, the Cathedral of War that we mentioned earlier, super, super great source of Exalted. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. That is Isshin 2 Heavens as 1, with the Exalted sub theme. I hope you like it. Let me know in the comments and in our Discord about decks you might put in, or cards you might put into this deck, other ways you might play it, stuff like that. And especially if you have a commander deck with Isshin, I think he's hysterical in any format. Tell me how you play him. Tell me what is the funniest creature that you've gotten to double a trigger on. I want to hear it. He's so goofy, so funny, and I love him in this deck, but there are a ton of ways to play him. And speaking of reaching out and commenting, comment below about all that stuff. Check out our Discord, and check out our other videos, and I will see you next time.
Talk to the people.